You're listening to the micro version of the Savage Lovecast. www.savagelovecast.com.
If you're stuck in a relationship quandary, or if you're looking for sexual harmony, well, there's nothing you can't ask on the Savage Lovecast.
I'm out of town this week, and actually, so is Nancy. Don't tell anyone. We eloped. Please don't tell our spouses. So no big rant to start the show this week. We're just going to get right to your questions. But I did have a programming note, something I said last week that I wanted to not clear up, I wanted to add to. Last week I mentioned a letter that Ben Franklin wrote to a friend about taking a mistress. And while it's true that Franklin said older women were preferable to younger women when it comes to mistresses because, and I quoted him, they are so grateful, those older women. And here Franklin used 2 exclamation points to make the seemingly sexist ageist suggestion that an older woman is by definition a more desperate woman and therefore more grateful to get the dick, any dick that she can get. I should have mentioned that grateful crack came at the end of a long list of other reasons why this young man, and it was a young man he was advising, should opt for an older woman as his mistress. According to Franklin, older women are more knowledgeable about the world and thus make better conversationalists, and you do spend a lot of time chatting after the sex, and they're more discreet. They demonstrate, quote, greater prudence in conducting an intrigue, which is an important trait in a mistress. There's also, if you go old enough, no hazard of children, and the pleasure of corporal enjoyment with an older woman is at least equal and frequently superior to a younger one, as the older woman is more practiced. You can read the letter itself online. It is not a hoax, but it's the grateful thing that gets quoted the most. It's the only thing that ever gets quoted about that letter Franklin wrote, and it isn't the only reason he gave. All right, coming up on today's show, on the micro edition of the Savage Lovecast, the free edition of the Savage Lovecast, tons of your Qs, lots of my As, and on the Magnum subscription edition of the Savage Lovecast that you can subscribe to at savagelovecast.com, twice as long and no ads and lots of guests, Dr. Becky Lynn joins us today to talk about the results of a study that she conducted on women and pot and orgasms and sex, and is there a relationship? And spoiler alert, there is. All that coming up on today's show. This episode of the Savage Lovecast is brought to you by Talkspace, online therapy that makes it easy to get extra support. Use the offer code SAVAGE for $45 off your first month. Go to Talkspace.com and use the offer code SAVAGE.
This episode of the Lovecast is brought to you by the good folks at Squarespace. They make it easy to build a beautiful website, blog, or online store. Head on over to squarespace.com/savage for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use the offer code SAVAGE to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
This episode of the Savage Lovecast is brought to you by Mercari, the selling app that makes it super easy to sell and ship your unused things. Sell it, ship it, and get paid with Mercari. You can find Mercari on the app stores or on Mercari.com.
Hi, Dan. I'm the tech-savvy at-risk youth. I am female, confused about sexual orientation, living in Utah. I have a question for you. I'm 35 now, and I want to know why I've been attracted only to men, my entire life. But whenever I've gotten really intoxicated, I really want to be with a woman, but it's not in like a sexual way. It's like I really want to have like a relationship. I've had one very short relationship with a woman and was very confused by it. And to this day, we still have this like really passionate relationship where I fall into these sort of fantasies of living this life with her and, adopting her child. But it gets really strong and really believable when I'm drunk, and when I'm sober, it scares me and it doesn't seem possible. And I just wonder why those feelings can be so strong. I wonder why, Dan, why am I a lesbian but only when I'm drunk?
Perhaps you have Kate and Allie syndrome, which is a reference to an ancient sitcom where 2 middle-aged married women with children move in with each other and blend their families and have this romantic friendship. Romantic friendships used to be a thing. It used to be a very common sort of relationship model. There were a lot of lesbian couples, no doubt, in the 19th and 18th and early 20th century who hid under the banner of romantic friendship. No pussy eating going on here. Nothing to worry about, ladies and gentlemen. We are just spinsters. We are just good friends who share a household for the convenience of it. And I wonder if that's not what you fantasize about when you are drunk, if that perhaps isn't the kind of relationship, not sexual relationship, but romantic relationship that might appeal to you on some level, and you can't really conceive of it or wrap your head around it or allow yourself to fantasize about it when you're sober, but when you're drunk, you're a 19th century spinster traveling through Constantinople on their way to Cairo with your spinster buddy. Maybe that's just my crazy theory. We've actually talked a lot in the last few years about people who are bisexual but homo or hetero romantic. Someone who's bisexual but has a strong preference romantically for one or the other sex. And it's possible that you are heterosexual and biromantic, or heterosexual and homo-romantic. People are infinitely complex. And something about booze allows you to go there. It disinhibits, and suddenly you're fantasizing about what might be a decent relationship for you, your preferred relationship model, which is sex with dudes on the side and then going home, the warm embrace of a loving and intimate friend.
Hi, Dan, a longtime follower from the Chicago Reader days. I am a cis female married in an open relationship. I have a close relationship with a platonic girlfriend for over 20 years now. Her brother is one of my dearest friends. I've gone to 5 of their family reunions, and I adore her parents. Well, about a month ago, I went to brunch with her and 2 other women when I shared my experience of racism in Connecticut and why I, as a Black woman, would not be relocating there for a job promotion. My friend, who lived in Connecticut for a while, took this very personally, but waited until the next day to send out a group text on how Connecticut is not racist, how when she lived there, she had a diverse group of friends and never saw anyone treated any differently because of their race. And what I was probably experiencing was a typical response to anyone not from the East Coast. I tried to explain to her that we're allowed to have different experiences, even in the same place, and that my account was not calling the entire state or her friends racists. But when there's institutionalized white supremacy, there are things that she will not experience due to her white privilege. As you can imagine, this did not go well. She's been telling her family and some of our shared friends that I'm calling her racist and a white supremacist. I'm now having to explain to more people than I'm comfortable with the difference between racism and white privilege, and it's super frustrating. As hurtful as this entire experience has been, I've seen her do similar things to other women she's close to, not specifically rape stuff, but playing a victim role when someone has a different worldview than she has. She calls pretty much any female friend that doesn't agree with her aggressive and plays this victim role. My question to you is, what should I do here? If I do nothing, she tells everyone that I'm a race instigator, and I continually have to defend myself to people that I consider to be my family.
There's a related dynamic, I think, that comes up a lot on this show, not tied to race, where women have it in their heads that they are there in a romantic relationship to repair it and repair him. And they are not allowed to walk the fuck away from someone who is shitty or damaged or awful or abusive or just not in good working order and is a drag. That you failed as a woman if you don't somehow doctor that relationship, if you don't repair it. You can't fix it. And so women stay in shitty relationships and slog away at them. It's why 20 years ago I came up with Not the Motherfucker Already, DTMFA, because so many of the letters were from people who needed just to be told to get the fuck out, that it was okay to leave, that you can break up with someone who's awful, irreparably so. And it's a skill. I think it's a skill that we all need to learn in life, to recognize when a relationship is too damaged or someone is too damaged to have a relationship with and exit. So my advice for you would be to dump the motherfucking shitty friend already, to cut this woman out of your life. She's sort of gaslighting you and race baiting you by accusing you of race baiting her in this weird funhouse mirror way. And it is not okay, to understand the difference between being a racist and being the beneficiary as a white person by default of white privilege in this culture. That's not a hard thing to wrap your head around, particularly if you have a patient friend of any race who can explain that to you. That takes about 2 seconds to really process and understand. So your friend is being, your hopefully ex-friend is being willfully obtuse and a shitty, insecure, kind of white supremacist here. It is kind of white supremacist-y to deny the existence of white supremacy. It's kind of white supremacist-y to pretend that white privilege is not a fucking thing, and to tell an African-American person that there was no racism in a state because when you lived there as a white person, you didn't see it. And to be the kind of white person who can't understand, can't see white privilege for what it is, and then turn around and say you're qualified somehow to say whether or not racism exists in a place and at a time? Bullshit. You say you have friends in common, friends who are siding with her. I would encourage you to cut those shitty fuckers out of your life as well and make some new goddamn friends and give yourself permission to walk the fuck away. It is not your job in a romantic relationship or a friendship to endlessly work on it. You have not failed if you end a relationship that is bad for you and a waste of your time and causing grief and trouble in your life. You can go. You have my permission to go. No. I don't want to give you my white dude male privileged permission to go. I want you to look inside yourself and say, isn't that what you want? Ask yourself, what do you want? Do you want to go? Because if you want to go, you have my full support. And I think it is the wisest course of action. I advise people to get therapy on this show a lot. It can be crucial to getting yourself into good working order, but I know how difficult it is to find the time, find the money, and find the right therapist. That's why I recommend Talkspace. Talkspace online therapy makes taking care of your mental health more affordable and convenient than ever before. Simply provide your preferences for therapy, and Talkspace will match you with one of 4,000 therapists for the very same day. Send your therapist unlimited text, audio, picture, or video messages from anywhere at any time. They offer couples counseling as well as sex therapy, and there's really no excuse not to do this. If you're going through a rough patch, you can always schedule a live video session with your therapist for extra support. 1 month of therapy on the Talkspace platform costs about the same amount as a single face-to-face session. Best of all, you'll never have to wait a week to share what's on your mind. Talkspace has more than 4,000 licensed therapists who are experienced in addressing the challenges we all face. To match with your perfect therapist for a fraction of the price of traditional therapy, go to Talkspace.com. Make sure to use the code SAVAGE to get $45 off your first month and show your support for this show. That's SAVAGE at Talkspace.com.
Hi, Dan and the Tech Savvy at-risk youth. I'm calling from a small town in Indiana, and I was just scrolling on a dating app, when I came across a very close friend's husband's profile. They've been together for, I think, 10 or 12 years. They're married. They have 2 small children. And I know without a doubt that this is not something that she would be aware of. It would not be okay with her. And I am debating on whether or not I should tell her. I know her well enough to know that she would want to know. I know I would want to know. But at the same time, I don't want to be the one to break the news to her. So I don't know what to do.
There are reasons short of I'm going to cheat on my spouse that people get onto dating apps. People like to get their flirt on. People sometimes socialize on dating apps. People like to be affirmed, have their attractiveness affirmed. And sometimes having your attractiveness affirmed by strangers on dating apps gives you the charge you need to go home and plow the shit out of your partner. Your partner has to be attracted to you, has to tell you you're hot. And that gets to people after a while. And they stop believing it when their partner says it. And then that can sabotage their intimacy, their sexual connection with their partner because they're feeling insecure and unattractive. And then hearing it from someone else whose job it isn't to tell you you're hot can send you home. And then when your partner says it, you believe them. And then you're fucking on the kitchen counter. Sometimes people go on dating apps with their partner's permission because they have an open relationship and they're closeted about their open relationship. And so their friends don't know that it is okay with them. And then their friends stumble over their partners on dating apps and feel the burden of keeping this secret or protecting that relationship or the struggle that you have right now? Do you reveal? You would want to know. She has led you to believe, perhaps accurately, that she would want to know, and this wouldn't be okay with her, which is sometimes what people who are in open relationships lead their friends and relatives to believe. And yeah, and people go on dating apps because they fully intend to cheat on their partners, and then they get caught. So what do? If you would want to know, you can golden rule this. If she'd found your spouse on that dating app, you would want her to tell you, so you're going to tell her. You have to bear in mind that you may blow that relationship up. And maybe they're at a low point, and maybe he's thinking about cheating, and he's going to think better of it and pull his face off that app after having a couple of conversations with a couple of people and get religion and walk a straight line and never get on a dating app again and never, despite having been on that dating app briefly, never touch another living human being on the planet ever again with the tip of his penis. Maybe that's what's going to happen. And the crisis in their relationship isn't then that he was briefly on this app. It would be the exposure that he was on this app. There's a lot to wrestle with here, isn't there? All that said, if you've spotted him, if he's being so reckless as to put his face on there and you recognized him, other women in your community, if he's looking local, are going to spot him too. And it is inevitably going to get back to his spouse that he is on a dating app. Because if you don't tell her, somebody else is going to tell her. And I think that tips the scales there. I think that sways me into the go tell her what you saw camp. And don't make assumptions. You should say to her, doesn't mean he's cheated necessarily. Sometimes people do this just for fun. You may hear from her, it's okay, we're not really having sex right now, and so we opened it up just for sex, and she may very reluctantly confide that in you. Or it may be the match to the fuse that blows up their marriage. And you will inevitably feel some share of responsibility for that if the explosion that ends the relationship is the outcome of the reveal. We Americans have too much damn stuff, am I right? I know I do. Lots of us have perfectly good things laying around the house that we no longer use, things that it's tempting to just toss in the trash, put in a landfill, but someone else might love to have that thing that you're eyeing for the trash in the landfill. And now there is an app that you can use to sell that nice thing and let someone else enjoy it. It's called Mercari. Mercari is a selling app that makes it fast and easy to sell almost anything. It's really simple to use. You take a few pics of your stuff, add a description, and boom, your item is listed. Then once it's sold, Mercari emails you a shipping label that you just stick on it and you send it off. No meetups, no hassles. The app has over 300,000 reviews on the App Store with an average 4.8 star rating, so why not give it a try? With millions of people already using the Mercari app in all 50 states, stuff really sells. You can sell everything from fashion to electronics to toys to sporting goods. Not only can you earn a few extra dollars, you'll clear up valuable space in your home and keep things out of landfills. So don't let that stuff you don't use anymore go to waste. Sell it, ship it, and get paid with Mercari. You can find Mercari on the app stores or on Mercari.com, Mercari, Mercari, the selling app.
Hi, Dan. I am a straight girl in Chicago, and I'm engaged. And me and my fiance, we're having a problem with our sex life. I guess that everything's fine, but whenever he wants to initiate sex, he, grabs my head and tries to, pull it towards his crotch. It's sex time. And to me, it's really annoying. That's not really how I want sex to start, but I understand where he's coming from because when I watch porn, I see that, girl suddenly gives me, unanticipated blowjob, and that's what it all comes down to. But I need more to get me going, but I still want to give him a blowjob. So what should I do? I guess I'm confused because I'm trying to make him happy, but I also just don't want to get my head shoved down on somebody's cock. Help.
So let's blame porn. Porn put it in his head that this is how you initiate or ask for a blowjob, and this is okay to do. To grab some woman's head, some woman that you're dating, someone you have a relationship with, and just shove her face down to your crotch. shove her face down to your dick, that's okay. And porn put that in his head. What put it in your head that you can't object to that? What put it in your head? And I'm not pointing finger at you, blaming you. What put it in your head that you couldn't, the first time he did that, you don't like it, tell him you don't like it? What put it in your head the first time he pulled that move that you couldn't just say, hey, look, I'm happy to suck your dick, but never, ever push my face down to your crotch like that again. That's not how you get a blowjob out of me. That's not how this blowjob Pez dispenser works. I require X, Y, and Z, a little build-up, some making out, a little rolling around, an ask, maybe use your words instead of your hands, and pressure and force, and then maybe you'll get a blowjob. But now, no blowjob for you. No dick in my mouth, not when you're shoving my face down to your crotch. Now, there are people out there that's what works for them. There are people out there who write me who want their partners to be more aggressive and push them around and force them, quote unquote, force them to do X, Y, or Z. Or even people have written me and described exactly what you described. When he wants a blowjob, why won't he just shove me down onto my knees? So there are some people out there who this move that he is deploying is exactly what they're looking for. You are not that person, and you need to tell him so. You need to tell him wherever this came from, even if he's never watched porn ever in his life, this isn't a move that works for you. And so it stops. And the next time he tries it, then you tell him, last chance, ever do that again, it's over. I've already told you, I do not like this. I do not like having my head shoved down to your crotch. If you had other girlfriends who like that, maybe you should give one of them a ring and date one of them instead. I don't like it. Stop it. And spoiler alert, the thing that put it in your head that you're not allowed to say that, the culture that socializes women to defer to men and not say no to men. Women often end up in sexual situations with men where then they call some other guy, this man with the dumb podcast, to get permission to do what the culture told them they're not allowed to do, which is to look at him and say, stop it. No, don't be shoving my head down into your crotch. I ain't a fleshlight. You want your dick in my mouth? You're going to have to earn it. Convince me that that's where I want your dick.
Can I ask you a kind of a personal question? How's your website looking? If you answered, Nancy, I don't have a website yet, or, well, it could maybe be better, then I have a little tip for you. Get yourself some Squarespace. Quit procrastinating and fire up your online presence already. Squarespace makes it super easy to crank out a beautiful, professional-looking website or blog or even an online store. They have templates that were created by world-class designers, so you can just drop them in and it looks great right away. And they have built-in e-commerce so you can set up an online store. There's nothing to patch or upgrade, and if you need help, they have 24/7 support. You can make it yourself and make it stand out with Squarespace. Head on over to squarespace.com/savage for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, use the offer code SAVAGE to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That's squarespace.com/savage and use the offer code SAVAGE.
Hey, Dan, quick moral question for you. My little sister, she's 19, so she's an adult, still lives with my parents. They pay for her car, her phone, everything. She has this asshat boyfriend now who doesn't want to use protection. They've been dating for like 4 months, and he's been telling her all these different lies about birth control, like the IUD requires surgery, and it will impact her athletic ability because she plays water polo. I've tried to correct these lies by giving her some actual information, and she just doesn't believe anybody except for him. My parents, who are Mormons, found out that they're having sex, and basically were very calm about the whole thing, which was very surprising to me. And they required that she get on birth control. They said that they would pay for it. She could pick any method she pleased. Didn't fucking matter to them. She just had to pick a method because I had kind of informed them without directly informing them, so she wouldn't get in trouble, that they should heavily imply that she should get on birth control because I'm worried about her. So as a response to this, she argued that it's her body and she can do whatever she wants with it. She ran away from home and she works at like Target. So who knows how long that's going to last for. But I was just curious about your thoughts on if you can require someone who's dependent on you to be on birth control, morally speaking.
Your sister's 19 years old and an adult. You can't require her to be on birth control, nor can your parents require her to be on birth control. And it would be a deeply shitty, manipulative thing to make getting on birth control a condition of having housing. I think your sister should be on birth control. I think you're right. I think your parents are right. I think the deepest, shittiest person in this entire scenario is this boyfriend who is lying to her about birth control. This is a huge red flag for abusive behavior. One of the signs of an abuser is a rush to a premature commitment. And sometimes that rush comes in the form of gonna knock you up, wants to get you pregnant as soon as possible, because then your DNA is scrambled together and you are stuck with each other in some capacity for life. I think that's what he's up to here. 4 months into this relationship, he's lying to her about birth control. He's pressuring her not to use birth control, to risk an unplanned and still, for the next however many months, teen pregnancy. With him, this is a way of locking her down by knocking her up. And you should say that to her. And your parents should say that to her. And you should all do as much urging and intervening as you can. But, you know, sometimes you watch someone you love, a young adult, slam their hand down on the self-destruct button, and there's nothing you can do about it. Except watch. And then be there to help pick up the pieces when they realize, as they almost always do, that they should have listened to you in the first place. And when that happens, you don't want to say, told you so. You just want to, because they know you told them so. They know. You just want to help them pick up the pieces.
Hi, Dan. I'm a 42-year-old woman in New York City calling about my dad, a 68-year-old retired gay man. My mom divorced him about 30 years ago when she realized he was gay. Then he was in a 17-year partnership, but ultimately I think his alcoholism and other issues led to his husband divorcing him 9 years ago. After that, he couldn't find a long-term relationship, saying that was what he wanted, but men his age were, in his words, old, fat, and ugly. He did meet men on apps, including silver daddies for hookups and attempts at dating. The bigger obstacles to a relationship were likely his deep sadness, alcoholism, tendency to be incredibly rude and mean under the guise of humor, and failure to attempt any kind of therapy. About a year and a half ago, he took a vacation to Panama and connected with a 26-year-old Panamanian man, or kid, as he called him, who had found him on an app. They spent the whole trip together and stayed in touch. Then my dad started taking him along on his retiree vacations every few months. By January 2018, he told me that he wanted to marry the kid, to offer him a better life in America, and to be his partner and take care of him as he gets older. I hoped that it would fizzle out due to the kid's inability to get even a tourist visa to come to the States and the relatively long absences between their vacations together. But by June of last year, I learned that my dad had been sending him $500 a month in addition to paying for his English lessons, gym membership, and of course the vacations. My dad is a retired school teacher living off a modest pension, so this represents a large percentage of his income. A few weeks ago, he announced that the application is in for the kid's fiancé visa to come to the U.S. I haven't met the kid and have not seen any evidence that this is more than opportunism. My dad is all over the place when trying to explain the relationship. He'll go from describing the kid as his charity case, a puppy dog that he's rescuing from a horrible existence, to saying that he's trying to find love where he is and he can't, so what other option is left, to all relationships are opportunistic and it's perfectly fine for one spouse to depend completely on the other financially. He says he expects the kid to come here and get an education and be successful, while also telling us that he was kicked out of his English course for disobeying the school's rules and that he doesn't have much to offer intellectually. He has also said to me that he has spent so much money on the kid and the immigration lawyer at this point that there's no turning back. He does at least promise that there will be a prenup. I'm actually maybe okay kind of about the relationship if it were to stay the way it was, where he sends an allowance and then that way he gets a companion for his trips. What's scary is having this person legally bound to my family and worrying about how this affects us all in the future. Is it unfair to not support this relationship, or should I be doing more to stop it?
Your dad, like the 19-year-old woman, adult woman, who may or may not be using birth control, depending on who she's listening to at this moment, is an adult. And he gets to make his own choices, even terrible ones. And he may be slamming his hand down on the self-destruct button here, or he may be having a perfectly wonderful commodified relationship with someone that he is using for sex and intimacy and connection, and who is using him to immigrate and for financial support. But there's not a lot that you can do about it, short of having your father declared incompetent, short of dragging him into court and having him assessed. What can you do? Your support for the relationship is irrelevant. You've already let him know that you think it's a bad idea. He's already trotted out all sorts of different rationalizations for the relationship, and now you're just going to have to stand back and let him have the relationship. You have your father's ear, and that's important, and you should use it. Press him on that prenup. Make sure he's actually drawn one up. Tell him you want to go with him to the lawyer. Obviously, it's not to protect your massive inheritance because he's a school teacher on a modest pension. So this isn't about greed. This isn't about, oh my God, this kid from wherever is going to get the family business and the family fortune. This is just about not wanting to see your father taken too much advantage of by this person that he is also taking advantage of. It's possible to construct a whole other narrative for this relationship where your father's the predator and your father's dangling this life in America to someone who's in a very desperate situation. It's also possible that they're both a little at fault and they're both using each other. But at the end of the day, you have to recognize the limitations of your powers here. You're not going to have him declared incompetent. You cannot stop this thing from happening. You can encourage your father to mitigate the obvious risks, and that does mean an ironclad prenup, if indeed he winds up marrying this guy. But you don't want to cut your dad off. If this person, if this kid, if his boyfriend, if his future spouse is abusive or violent, your dad may need to call you guys in, call in his family like the cavalry to rescue him from his own stupidity. And don't say I told you so, just be there. And it's possible to say to your dad, I'm going to be supportive but skeptical. I am going to be supportive, but I am going to scrutinize this relationship because it could be exploitative in either direction, and it could be bad. Any relationship could be bad, and a relationship with these kinds of power differentials and financial differentials, yeah, those kinds of relationships are ripe for abuse. So I support you whatever choice you make, Dad, but let's all keep our eyes open, shall we? You, me, all of us. And now let's go see the lawyer about that prenup.
Hi, Dan. I am a gay man in my mid-30s living in the Midwest. About 3 years ago, I started to party and play with ecstasy, MDMA, and Tina. At first on a weekly basis, and then an entire weekend, and finally nearly every day. 1 year ago this month, in March 2018, I stopped. During those years of partying, my sex life was hooking up only, either with others partying or random guys that were not. Now that I am sober and healthy, I am ready and interested in dating and hopefully finding a boyfriend. I am having a difficult time in feeling sexually attracted to guys, and I have anxiety about getting back into the flirting and dating game. It is almost as if the years of partying and meeting guys in that context has dampened my libido and ability to naturally crush and be interested in guys like I once was. I am blessed with a loving family and I have a great therapist. My question for you, can you provide any guidance, tips, or pointers on helping me reconnect with my inner self and with guys?
So the partying started 3 years ago, and you got sober a year ago. So there were 2 years there, and it was intense toward the end of that period. You were doing all these drugs on a daily basis and creating a really powerful association between drugs and hooking up and sex. And there is this subculture of chem parties, chem guys, chem gays who are hooking up and using tons of drugs and looking for other guys who are in the same place, all fucked up on these drugs and looking for dick. And for a lot of guys who get sucked into this, it's not just about pleasure, it's about shame. The drugs allow them to overcome whatever it was that was pounded into their heads by the culture, by their families, by their religious traditions about their desires being not okay. And the only way they can find to give themselves permission to do the things that they want to do, to screw the people that they want to screw, is to turn it off with drugs, to turn off all of those voices, to override the shame. And it ain't healthy, as you know, and it ain't sustainable, as anyone who's watched a friend crack up and die because they got addicted to meth and dick and meth in that combo. So good for you that you got off it. I'm glad that you have a loving and supportive family. I'm glad that you have a good therapist. You ask me for any tips and pointers on reconnecting with guys, and my answer is probably going to be no different than your therapist. To take it slowly, to avoid guys, not avoid, to absolutely say no to guys who are abusing these party drugs, and to be honest with the guys that you do date. You know, you're not 15 years a meth addict. You got sucked into E and meth and whatever else for a year or two. Hardcore for however long it was you were doing it on a daily basis. And you're tiptoeing back out of that. And it's going to take some time for you to carve some new neural pathways, for you to make some new and positive associations between intimacy, between sex, even recreational sex, and your sober self, and your being fully present. And so I would encourage you to be honest with the guys that you meet, the guys that you date, that this is where you're at right now. And intimacy minus drugs right now is a unfamiliar place. But it isn't as unfamiliar to you as it might be to guys who were abusing drugs like this and dick like this and themselves like this for a decade or more. 24 months. It's only been 12 since you got sober. That's a big deal. Be patient. Give it some more time. Find, instead of a boyfriend or sex partners, find some cuddle buddies. Find some people that you can have low stakes, low key intimacy with and just experience skin to skin contact and hanging out and watching movies, and lower the pressure, lower expectations, and allow it to reemerge from inside you. Because it was there. You're in your mid-30s. This is the last 3 years you're talking about, 1 year of it sober. And prior to that, you had this capacity to connect with guys, to be intimate with guys, to be your gay self. So it's in there. It's just buried under a lot of drugs and a lot of really powerful associations between the euphoria and manicness with meth of those drugs and how you welded that to sex. And it's just going to take some time to make a new association between sex and desire and intimacy, as opposed to sex and desire and chemistry.
Hi, Dan. I am a 23-year-old woman living in the Pacific Northwest. My boyfriend and I have been together for about 2 months now, and I have something really weird going on. I've told him pretty much from the get-go that I really, really like oral sex and expect him to go down on me. He did it once shortly after we started dating for maybe like a minute, and then he never did it again, even though I asked him multiple times to do so. About probably 2 weeks ago, he tried one more time to go down on me, and it was super, super awkward. I asked him, I said, will you go down on me when we were, when we were making out? And he said, I'm just too tired. And I said, okay, I was a little bit hurt by it, and he could tell, so he's like, no, okay, I'll go down on you. And, my reaction was, well, no, I don't want you to go down on me. Like, you obviously aren't into it, you don't want to do it, I'm not going to ask you to do it. And he basically was like, no, like, please, come on, let me do it. I didn't mean it like that. Like, so we did it, and I was super close to coming when all of a sudden he stopped and was like, can you even get off from this? And it kind of ruined things. After that, I said, I do expect oral sex on a regular basis. Like, it's something that gets me off and something that I really appreciate. And so far, nothing. Nothing at all. So, and he'll bring it up. He'll say, oh, I know you want oral, and then just won't do it. What the fuck? What are your thoughts?
Well, have you tried just putting your hand on the top of his head and pushing him down toward your crotch? I've heard that might work. 2 months. You've invested 2 months in this relationship. You're not sexually compatible. He doesn't like eating pussy, and you require pussy eating to feel sexually fulfilled, to get off. And this guy's doing a thing that a lot of people have done, a lot of women have done too, where there's this sex act that their partner wants and appreciates or requires, and their MO, their strategy is to do it reluctantly and badly in the hopes that they will not be asked to do it ever again. Kind of shitty and manipulative, instead of just saying, hey, I don't like eating pussy, and so price of admission being with me is that's not going to happen, because then you can walk. They're just going to string you along saying, oh, you like that maybe, are you still enjoying this? I'm going to do it for you once in a while just so you'll keep dating me until we're like so far in, you're really not going to make a big emotional investment in me. And then once the oral stops, the bad oral reluctantly performed once in a great while, once that finally stops, then maybe you won't break up with me because we have a house and a kid. Break up with him now. It's been 2 fucking months. You're still in the discovery phase, and what you've discovered is that you guys are not sexually compatible, that he's not the kind of sex partner that you need. You need some guy who loves to eat pussy, and those guys are out there. And some of them are with women who don't like to have their pussies eaten, and those guys send me sad letters, and sometimes call the show with their sad problem. They don't get to eat pussy because their wife or girlfriend doesn't enjoy that for whatever reasons, and sometimes the reasons can be legitimate. Some people just don't like oral. Go find one of those guys, because not all of those guys are partnered. Some of those guys are single, and they are ready, willing, and able, and dying to eat your pussy.
Hi, Dan. I'm a queer mid-30s woman on the West Coast, and I'm just calling for a little perspective on a rule or boundary in my open relationship that my partner and I have different feelings about. We're sort of prepping for a talk about it, so I just kind of wanted to get some perspective first. We have some problems in our open relationship, but we're trying to work through them. We have different expectations, but one thing that we clash on is our home. We're married and we live together, and we're open, to seeing other people separately and together. And we've brought people into our home together before. My partner really wants to be able to, what I think of as like treat our home as if they're single and living by themselves, as if it's not our home. Meaning, I think they want to be able to bring people back whenever they want to our house. Maybe not when I'm there, but like when I'm out or if I'm away. And we live in an extremely small apartment that works for the two of us, but I just feel pretty uncomfortable with this. I'm happy to support my partner in them going out and having experiences with other people or going home with other people. And I've come a long way on that and really, I think, opened up a lot at the idea of them, for example, spending the night with other people or whatever. But I'm just pretty uncomfortable with the idea of sharing my home with these people that my partner's going out with when, I don't really know them. And it's not that I don't trust them. It's just that it's our home. And I just kind of want to keep it as our home for us and our sexual experiences and the people that we choose to bring together into the home. I'm sort of open to the idea of, like, you can bring someone back and fool around on the couch, but that just seems like a pretty slippery slope, and I don't want to put my partner in a position of feeling like there's, like, a whole space of the house that's off limits. And I would just honestly feel more comfortable with saying, this is our home, can we keep it as ours? I'm wondering if this is a pretty common ask in open relationships, because my partner seems to feel that a lot of my boundaries are arbitrary, and I want some perspective. I want to know if I'm being an asshole, if I'm asking for too much and asking that my partner not bring people back to the very, very small house that we share together, even if I'm out of town.
Over up. You say you don't want them to feel like this is off limits. That's exactly how you want them to feel. This is off limits. You are saying that you have a boundary and you want your bed, at least your bed, you'll throw on the couch. You want your bed to be sacred, at least for now, to your relationship. This is a space where only you and her get together, where only the two of you have sex. It's not a place that you bring back others, thirds, fourths, whatevers. This is just for you, and you require that to be in this open relationship. Seems perfectly reasonable to me, and doesn't seem at all arbitrary that the bed and the bedroom for you has emotional significance. And you want to feel like this is a special space where you two are intimate and sexual only with each other. That's common in open relationships, for people to hold something back, to say, this is just for us. If there's this special whatever just for us. Some people, that's PIV. There are a lot of opposite sex couples in open relationships where they call it soft swapping when they go to play parties and they do oral and mutual masturbation or fantasy stuff with others and roll around, but no PIV. It is also common for people in open relationships to have not in our house. It happens outside of our house or outside of our time zone, outside of our city, no one in our social sphere or friend groups. There's all sorts of limitations that people put down in open relationships that make them work, that make it possible for someone to be in an open relationship. And it's not always the case that everyone's on the exact same page. Sometimes a person has to concede something. I would like to be in an open relationship. I would like to be in an open relationship with you. I think we should be able, both of us, to bring people home and fuck them in this bed in our apartment. but you don't feel that way. And so I'm going to honor your feelings and prioritize your comfort because I want to be your partner and I want us to open this relationship up together in a way that we both feel good about. And so I will concede that. And it's a small concession. So even if it is arbitrary, so the fuck what? Often these arbitrary seeming limits or rules are temporary. And once you see that your partner is fucking someone on the couch, the idea of your partner fucking someone in the bed will maybe be less scary or less fraught or become less significant over time, and you will renegotiate the rules. A long-term open relationship often involves renegotiating the terms. So just bear in mind that whatever rules you guys establish, you may revisit. And what seems hugely important to you now, not in our bed, may be less important to you in time. And then you can reopen the negotiations. But for now, stick to your guns. Not in our bed. How hard is that? Are there no Motel 6s? Is there no Balm in Gilead? Is there no sofa in our living room? Yes, there is. There are Motel 6s. There are sofas. There are other places. There's their house. You're making a very reasonable request, and your partner should honor it. And by honoring it, even if they weren't on the same page about it, even if they felt differently about it, they're demonstrating to you they care about your feelings and therefore are someone you might feel safe being in an open relationship with. If your partner argues with you about this endlessly, maybe they're not someone you're going to feel safe being in an open relationship with. Before we get to listener feedback, some of your tweets. Carrie Bell tweets, listening to the newest Savage Lovecast and remembering when I sent at Fake Dan Savage a long rambling email asking him if it was okay that I wasn't talking to my dad. And he responded with, permission granted, your dad sounds like a jerk. You can see him at his funeral. That's some ice cold fucking advice right there. But toxic people, you get to cut them out of your life, even if they're related to you by blood. At Wake Up Song tweets on men's need for foreplay, hashtag at Savage Lovecast, how is this hard to understand, a man's need for foreplay? Because everyone thinks dicks are 18 years old forever. Sometimes a dick is rock hard. Sometimes it needs coaxing. Foreplay for all y'all. Want to endorse that? Foreplay for all y'all. This sounds like it's in response to something I said, but I don't recall ever saying that men don't deserve or dick havers don't deserve their fair share of foreplay. Of course they do. I endorse foreplay for dicks. And finally, the Normalizing Non-Monogamy podcast tweets at me at my podcast, catching up on a ton of Magnum Savage Lovecasts and had an idea for the DADT folks out there. Those would be people who have don't ask, don't tell agreements with their partners. They're in open relationships, but you can't ask their partners if it's okay if you fuck them because they're not supposed to tell their partners when they're fucking other people. That's DADT. The advice from the Normalizing Non-Monogamy podcast host is record a short video on your phone with your partner for the people you want to date. Fuck. Hey, we're happily together and they can fuck who they want, but I don't want to know about it. Enjoy! ! That is solid, and I must say, tech-savvy advice. Thank you, Normalizing Non-Monogamy podcast, for weighing in. Now, your response calls.
Fellow queer woman calling to help your last caller about how to manage getting hit on by guys in bars when you are not interested in them at all. I would like to say that I have perfected the term that I really can't stand, the resting bitch face. But, you know, you said something that you used the word graceful in your way of, like, turning them down. And just as a reminder, especially since you're not interested in ever seeing these people again, you don't have to be graceful. You can just say, no thanks, dude, and turn away. You can, like, literally do all of the things that show them that you're, like, really, really not interested, because sometimes when I try to be kind or friendly, they take that as a miscommunication of my interest in them. And I'm like, nah, dude, I have, like, zero interest in you, so you got to show that verbally and non-verbally all at the same time. I'm sure you're doing it also because, like, oftentimes they just don't give a shit and they don't take no for an answer. And so just keep doing it, turn away, don't make eye contact, look at your lady, and ignore them. They're a bunch of D-bags, so whatever.
Hi, Dan. This is a call in response to the queer young lady on episode 649. As a straight guy, if you want us not to hit on you, just be fucking rude. Tell us, hey, no, we're not fucking interested. And I'll get the point. I'm with it. I like when I'm being told straightforward and, like, without any feeling covering up, I'm not interested. It lets me know that I should just end all hope. And I'm good with that. Also, You know, if you pretend like I'm not there too, if I'm like, hey, how you doing? And you just don't even hear me on purpose, I'm gone. This is just for me, though. I don't know about the rest of the male population, but I'm pretty damn sure if you give them the cold fuck you feel, they'll go away.
Hi, I am a cis lady calling with a comment for the guy who yawns after he comes. I yawn without fail every time after I come, and it's kind of how my husband can tell whether or not I've had an orgasm. So it's totally normal and adorable, and is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of or insulted by. And I think your sexual partners who are insulted are probably just insecure.
And we're going to leave it there. 206-302-2064 is the number here at the Savage Lovecast. If you'd like to record a question or a comment for a future show, give us a buzz, 206-302-2064. Hey, My Dirty Little Porn Film Festival is headed this week to Cleveland, Ohio, and tickets are on sale now at humpfilmfest.com. And our newest film festival, Spliff, with films made by stoners, for stoners, is in Denver this weekend at the Oriental Theater. Head to spliffilmfest.com for more info and to get tickets. And Seattle, don't forget to buy tickets for Savage Love Live at the Egyptian on May 11th with special guests Rachel Clark and comedian Corina Lucas. Buy your tickets at savagelovecast.com and go to savagelovecast.com/events to find out when Savage Love Live is coming to a city near you. All right, follow me on Twitter at FakeDanSavage. Follow Dr. Becky Lynn on Twitter at BeckyKLynn. Savage Lovecast is produced every week by Nancy Hartunian and me and the tech-savvy at-risk youth. And Nancy, we'll all be back at you next week with an installment of Savage Lovecast. Thanks for downloading.